Samsara Dava Nalalida Loka Tranaya Karanya Ganaganatvam Praptasya Kalyana Gunanavasya Vande Guru Shri Sharanaravidam Mahaprabhu Kirtana Nitya Gita Vaditya Madhyan Manaswara Sena Romancha Kampa Shrutaranga Bajo Vande Guru Shri Sharanaravidam Vande Guru Shri Sharanaravidam Vande Guru Shri Sharanaravidam Shri Vigahara Dhananitya Nana Shingara Tanmantir Majanado Yuktasa Bhaktam Shaniunsha Topi Vande Guru Shri Sharanaravidam Chaturvidashi Bhagavat Prasada Swadhana Triptan Hari Bhakta Sangha Kritaiva Triptim Bhajata Sadaiva Vande Guru Shri Sharanaravidam Vande Guru Shri Sharanaravidam Vande Guru Shri Sharanaravidam Shri Radhika Madhavayora Para Madhurya Leela Guna Rupa Namna Pratikshana Swadhanalalupasya Vande Guru Shri Sharanaravidam Nikunja Yuna Yatikeli Siddhai Yayali Bir Yuktir Apekshaniya Tatati Daksha Dati Valabhasya Vande Guru Shri Sharanaravidam Vande Guru Shri Sharanaravidam Vande Guru Shri Sharanaravidam Sakshadarit Vena Samasa Shastrer Uktastata Bhavyata Eva Sadvi Kintu Prabhurya Priyaiva Tasya Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam. Yasya Prasada Bhagavat Prasado Yasya Prasada Nagati Kutopi. Dayam Subham Sasya Yasya Trisandhyam Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam. Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam. Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam. Jaya Shri Krishna Namaho Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nivishesha Shunyavadi Vasyacha Deshatarine. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Oh, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Nila Madhva Radha Nila Madhva Radhe. Jaya Radha Nila Madhva Radha Nila Madhva Radhe. Jaya Jagannatha Jaya Jagannatha Jaya Baladeva Jaya Subhadra. Jaya Sitaram, 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 Jaya Lakshman Hanuman. Jaya Gauranitai, 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 Jaya Gauranitai. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Nitai Gaura Haribol, 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 Nitai Gaura Haribol.
Namaste Narasimhaya. Prahaladadayine. Hiranyakashi Purvakshaha. Shilatankanakalaye. Hitom Narsimha Paratom Narsimha. Yato yato yami tatom Narsimha. Bahir Narsimha Hrudaye Narsimha. Narasimha Madim Sharanam Prapaje. Tava Kara Kamalavare Nakam Adbhuta Shrangam Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanubringa Keshavadrita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare. Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev. नरसिंहदेव भगवान की महाराज की
वृंदाय तुलसी देवाय प्रियाय केशवसचा विष्णु भक्ति पदे देवी सत्यवत्याय नमो नमः वृंदाय तुलसी देवाय प्रियाय केशवसचा विष्णु भक्ति पदे देवी सत्यवत्याय नमो नमः वृंदाय तुलसी देवाय प्रियाय केशवसचा विष्णु भक्ति पदे देवी सत्यवत्याय नमो नमः
नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः राधा कृष्ण सेवा पाओ हे अभिलाषी राधा कृष्ण सेवा पाओ Shri Radha Govinda Preme Sada Bhakti. Shri Radha Govinda Preme Jaya Tulsi Maharani 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 Jaya Vrinda Devi Jaya Vrinda Devi Jaya Vrinda Devi Jaya Vrinda Devi
Chaitanya Shastra complete Brahmani Brahmani Svare Pavata Bhaktir Hai Tuti Tavai Ainam Tanuja Kinkaram Patitam Mam Shame Bhavam Buddha Kripaya Tavapada Pankasa Sivaduri Padesham Sinchaya Nayanam Garadashru Dharaya Vadnam Yatala Rudaya Gira Purakai Nistam Bapu Kada Tavanama Kane Parishyati Yugaitam Nimisena Chakshisa Pravisaitam Shunyaitam Jatasarvam Govinda Virahetame Ashrishava Padaratam Tinmastumam Adarsanam Marmatam Karotuva Yatha Tathava Vitathaku Lampato Madprananatha Sutadevana Paraha Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Shishakana Shishata Kanti Jai. Glory to the Sri Krishna Sankirtan, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of conditional life of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan movement defines the ambitions of the of art because its preservation and foundation is the life of all transcendent knowledge. It creates its ocean transcendent bliss and it was a fully taken nectar for its always honesty. O my Lord, your holy name alone commands all nations unity. Thus you have hundreds of millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendent unity you have the soil of transcendent energies. They are not even hard or crude for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness and because of easily approach you by your holy name. I am so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking himself Lord in the starting street. One should be more solemn and achieve, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O my, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, now to lead for women, all the women on any part. I only want one household and service first officer. O son Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am eternal service. Yet somehow I have fallen into the ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean and place me at some high with the ocean. O my Lord, all my eyes be that the tears of love for the constant one of heaven's husband. Lower my voice choke up, then we always have my body stand and I will keep you on. O Govinda, being on separation and at the moment of your life you are in yourself. Tears are flowing from eyes like torrents of rain, and I feel all vacant in the world of absence. I am no one but Krishna, my Lord. He shall remain so independent and love by his grace, and makes me broken hearted and not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipful Lord. There are 10 offenses in the message of the holy name that should be avoided, and they are as follows. 1. To blaspheme the devotees or dedicate the life of the reputation of the Lord. 2. To consider the names of demigods like Lord Shiva or Arjuna to be equal and independent of the Lord Vishnu. 3. To disobey the orders of the command. 4. To blaspheme the scriptures or scriptures of the verse. 5. To consider the glory of chanting Hare Krishna in imagination. 6. To give some interpretation to the holy name of God. 7. To commit sin to accurately and substantive chanting. 8. To consider chanting Hare Krishna one of the auspicious virtues that often the Vedas as with accuracy karma. 9. To instruct the faithful persons on the glory of holy name. 10. To do not complete faith in the holy name and to maintain mature attachment without attending so many discussions on this matter. It is also an offense to Ian and Joachim. I read the word defending the Vaishnava matter regarding these sentences. Which achieves God's success. Krishna says, now let us offer most humble obeisances on all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. Yes, thy tree, good, and the compassion following वंशाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। अनन्तकोटि वैष्णववृन्द की जय। श्री मंगलाचार्य प्रेयर्स की जय। ओम ज्ञानातिमिरन्दस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरुं वैष्णवंश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं सद्भावैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादां सहगणा ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च। नमो ॐ विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्तस्वामीति नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषशून्यवादे पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे। नमो ॐ विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिसिद्धान्त सरस्वतीति नामिने। श्रीवर्षभानुवी देवी दयिताय कृपप्रये कृष्णसम्बन्धविज्ञानतये पतये नमः। मधुयोज्ज्वलप्रेमाय श्रीरूपलोकभक्तिद श्रीगौरकर्णशक्तिविग्रहाय नमोस्तुते। नमस्ते गौरवाणी श्रीमूर्तये दीनतारिणे रूपानुगविरुदापस्थितां सद्वन्तहारिणे। नमो गौरकिशोराय साक्षात् वैराग्यमूर्तये विकलाम्बरसम्भोधे पादं पूजयते नमः। नमो भक्तिविनोदाय सच्चिदानन्दनामिने गौरशक्तिस्वरूपाय रूपानुगवरायते। गौरवापूर्णस्त्वं निर्देशासजनप्रिय वैष्णवसार्वभौम श्रीजगन्नाथाय ते नमः। वंशाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। नमो महावन्याय कृष्णप्रेमप्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्णचैतन्यनाम्ने गौरकिसे नमः। पञ्चतत्त्वात्मकं कृष्णं भक्तरूपस्वरूपकं भक्तावतारं भक्ताख्यं नमामि भक्तशक्तिकं। हे कृष्ण करुणासिन्धो दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिकाकान्त राधाकान्त नमोस्तुते। जयतां श्रुतो भैरवो मम मन्दमतिर्गति मत्सर्वस्वपदं भवतु राधा मातरमोहन। दिव्यज्ञानदारिण्यकल्पद्रुमदः श्रीमद्राधाकाराभिघातनस्थो श्रीमद्राधाशिलगोविन्ददेवो कृष्णादिशैलमनोस्मरामि। श्रीमन्राधारघराम्बी वंशीवतसतस्थितः हर्षं वेणुसुनर्गोभिर्गोपीनाथ श्रीजयसुनः। तप्तकाञ्चन गौराङ्गी राधे वृन्दवनेश्वरि वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। जय श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानन्द श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरभक्तवृन्द। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। Brahma Samhita prayers की जय। ईश्वर परम कृष्ण सच्चिदानंद विग्रह अनादि आदि गोविंद सर्वकारण चिंतामणि प्रकट सुख प्रवेश लक्षाविकेश पारयन्तम लक्ष्मी सहस्रशतसंक्रम सेव्यमान गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि। वेणुत्वनतमरविन्ददलायताक्षं बर्हावतं समसितं कुशसुन्दराङ्गं गन्धर्वकोटिकमनीयविशेषशोभं गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं
Sadurlabham Adurlabham Atma Bhakto Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Pantastukoti Satavatsara Sampragamyo Vayo Ratapi Manasomani Pungamanam Sobhyasti Yat Prabhadasimya Vichintya Tattve Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ekop Yasora Chayatam Jagadanda Kotim Yaschakti Rasti Jagadanda Chayayadanta Andanta Rasta Paramanu Chayanta Rastam Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yad Bhava Bhavita Diyo Manajasta Taiva Samprapya Rupa Mahima Sanayana Bhusa Suktarya Meva Nigama Pratitastavanti Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasam Mataya Manasu Yapani Nam Pratifalam Smaratam Upedya Lilayata Gulani Jaya Jasram Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Premanjana Charita Bhakti Vilochanena Santak Sadeva Hidesu Vilokayanti Yam Shama Sundaram Achintyat Gunaswarupam Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ramadi Murti Sukalani Menatistan Nana Avataram Akarod Bhuvanesa Kintu Krishna Swayam Samabhavat Paramam Pumamyo Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yasya Prabha Prabhavato Jagananda Koti Swasesa Vasudadi Vibhuti Bhinnam Tad Brahman Iskalam Anantam Asesa Bhutam Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Maya Hiyasya Jagadanda Satani Sute Trigun Yatad Vishaya Veda Vitayamanam Sattva Valambi Parasatvam Visuddha Sattvam Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasat Mataya Manasu Yaprani Nam Patifalam Smaratam Upedya Lila Yatena Bhuvanani Jaya Yajasram Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Goloka Namni Nijadamni Tale Chatasya Devi Mahesu Haridama Sute Sutesu Tete Prabhavani Jaya Vijasya Yena Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Shestistati Pralaya Sadhava Sakti Reka Chayeva Yasya Bhuvanani Vibharti Durga Ichana Rupam Apyasa Chachesta Desa Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Siram Yata Dadi Vikara Visesa Yoga Sanjayate Nahitata Pritagasti Hetu Yasam Bhutam Apitatat Samapaiti Karyat Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Departure Santanam Abhyupetya Dipayate Vivita Hetu Samanu Dharma Yastadra Geva Hicha Vishnu Taya Vibhati Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yakarna Narnava Jale Bhajitisma Yoga Nidram Mananta Jagadanda Saroma Kupaha Adhara Satyam Avalambya Param Swamurtim Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yasyaika Nisvasitakala Matavalambya Jivanti Loma Villaja Jagadanda Nata Vishnur Mahansa Yasya Kala Visesu Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Vasmanya Tasma Sakalesana Jesa Teja Sriyam Kiyat Prakaptayat Apitadvatatra Brahmaya Esa Jagadana Vidana Karta Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yat Pala Vyagam Vinidaya Kumbad Vande Pranama Samayesa Ganadi Raja Vignan Vihanta Malamasya Jagatrayasya Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Agnir Mahika Galamam Muvaruti Sascha Kala Statatma Manasiti Jagatrayani Yasmad Bhavanti Vibhavanti Visanti Yamcha Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yaschak Suresa Savitasa Galagrahanam Raja Samasta Suramurti Resesa Teja Yasyagaya Brahmati Sambrita Kala Chakro Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Dharmo Tapapa Nichayasya Dayasta Pamsi Brahma Dikita Patagava Dayasta Jiva Yadata Matra Vibhava Prakada Prabhava Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yastrindra Gopa Matavendra Mahosva Karma Bandhana Rupa Falabhajana Matanoti Karmani Nirdhati Kintu Chabakti Bhajam Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yam Kroda Kama Sahaja Pranayadi Vitti Vatsalya Moha Guru Gora Vasevya Bhavai Sanchintya Tasya Sadvisim Tanam Apurete Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Shriya Kanta Kanta Parama Purusha Kalpataravo Juma Bhumis Chintamani Galama Ito Yamamritam Kataganam Natyam Gamanam Apivam Sipriya Saki Chiranandam Jyoti Param Apitada Swadyam Apicha Sayatra Siradi Bihi Sravadi Surabi Vyasta Sumahan Nimesa Dakyava Rajatina Yatra Pisamaya Vajay Svita Dvipam Tamaham Iya Golokam Ityam Vidantaste Santakshati Virachara Katipaye Shri Guru Vastika prayers Ki Jai. The spiritual master is receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy, just as a cloud pours water on a forest fire to extinguish it. So the spiritual master delivers the materially afflicted world by extinguishing the blazing fire of material existence. I offer my respectful obeisance to the lotus feet of such a spiritual master who is an ocean of auspicious qualities. Chanting the holy name, dancing in ecstasy, singing and playing musical instruments, the spiritual master is always gladdened by the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Because he is relishing the mellows of pure devotion within his mind, sometimes his hair stands on end. He feels quivering in his body, and tears flow from his eyes like waves. I offer my respectful obeisance to the lotus feet of such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is always engaged in the temple worship of Shri Radha and Krishna. He also engages his disciples in such worship. They dress the deities in beautiful clothes and ornaments, clean their temple, and perform other similar worship of the Lord. I offer my respectful obeisance to the lotus feet of such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is always offering Krishna 4 kinds of delicious food, analyzes that which is licked, chewed, drunk, and sucked. When the spiritual master sees that the devotees are satisfied by eating Bhagavad Prasada, he is satisfied. I offer my respectful obeisance to the lotus feet of such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is always eager to hear and chant about the unlimited conjugal pastimes of Radhika and Madhava and their qualities, names, and forms. The spiritual master aspires to relish these at every moment. I offer my respectful obeisance to the lotus feet of such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is very dear because he is expert at assisting the gopis who at different times make different tasteful arrangements for the perfection of Radha and Krishna's conjugal loving affairs within the groves of Vrindavana. I offer my most humble obeisances unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is to be honored as much as the Supreme Lord because he is the most confidential servant to the Lord. This is acknowledged in all revealed scriptures and followed by all authorities. Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisance to the lotus feet of such a spiritual master who is a bona fide representative of Shri Hare Krishna. By the mercy of the spiritual master, one receives the benediction of Krishna. Without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot make any advancement. Therefore, I should always remember and praise the spiritual master at least 3 times a day. I should offer my respectful obeisance to the lotus feet of my spiritual master, his divine grace. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Gaura Premanandi Haribol. Shrimad Bhagavatam Grantaraj Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Te Samaitrena Dosena Visham Ikrita Chetasam Dimlokati Ravava Venunam Eva Mardanam Tesam of them, Myrena of intoxication, Dosena by the faults, Visamikrita became unbalanced, Chetasam of those of whom the minds, Nimlokati sets, Ravo the sun, Asit takes place, Venunam of the bamboos, Eva as, Mardanam destruction. A translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. As by the friction of bamboos, destruction takes place, so also, at sunset, by the interaction of the faults of intoxication, all their minds became unbalanced, and destruction took place. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. When there is need of fire in the forest, by the will of the Supreme, it takes place due to friction among the bamboos. Similarly, the destruction of Yadus or the descendants of Yadus were all destroyed by the will of the Lord, by the process of self-destruction. Just as there is no possibility of a fire's occurring deep in the forest due to human effort, so also there was no power in the universe which could vanquish the descendants of Yadu, who were protected by the Lord. The Lord wanted them to be so destroyed, and thus they obeyed his order, as indicated by the word Tad Anugyata. Text number 3. Bhagavan Swatma Mayaya Gatim Tam Avalokyasa Sarasvatim Upasprisya Vriksha Moolam Upavisat. Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead. Swatma Mayaya, by his internal potency. Gatim, the end. Tam, that. Avalokya, foreseeing. Sa, he, Krishna. Sarasvatim, the river Sarasvati. Upasprisya, after sipping water. Vriksha Moolam, at the foot of a tree. Upavisat, sat down. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. The personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna, after foreseeing the end of his family by his internal potency, went to the bank of the river Sarasvati, sipped water, and sat down underneath a tree. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. All the above-mentioned activities of the Yadus and Bhojas were executed by the internal potency of the Lord because he wanted them to be dispatched to their respective abodes after he had finished his mission of descent. They were all his sons and grandsons and were given complete protection by the paternal affection of the Lord. How they could be vanquished in the presence of the Lord is answered in this verse. Everything was done by the Lord himself. Swatma Mayaya. The Lord's family members were either incarnations of his plenary expanses or demigods from the heavenly planets, and thus, before his departure, he separated them by his internal potency. Before being dispatched to their respective abodes, they were sent to the holy place of Prabhasa, where they performed pious activities and took food and drink to their heart's content. It was then arranged for them to be sent back to their abodes so that others could see that the powerful Yadu dynasty was now no longer in the world. In the previous verse, the word anugyata, indicating that the whole sequence of events was arranged by the Lord, is significant. These particular pastimes of the Lord are not manifestations of his external energy or material nature. Such an exhibition of his internal potency is eternal, and therefore one should not conclude that the Yadus and Bhojas died in a drunken state in an ordinary fratricidal war. Srila Jiva Goswami comments on these incidents as magical performances. Gaura Premanandi Haribol. Text number 4. Aham Chokto Bhagavata Prapannati Harenaha Badarim Tvam Payahiti Swakulam Sanjiri Suna. Aham, I, Cha, and Ukta was told, Bhagavata, by the Supreme Lord, Prapana, of the surrendered, Aarti Harina, by he who is the vanquisher of the distress, of the distresses. Ha, indeed, Badarim, to Padari, Tvam, you, Prayahi, should go, Iti, thus, Swakulam, his own family, Sanjiri Suna, who desired to destroy. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. The Lord is the vanquisher of the distresses of one who is surrendered unto him. Thus, he who desired to destroy his family told me previously to go to Badarik Ashrama. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. While at Dwarka, Uddhava was warned to avoid the distresses which were to follow the disappearance of the Lord and the destruction of the Yadu dynasty. He was advised to proceed to Badarik Ashrama because there he could associate with the devotees of Narayana, and in their association of devotional service, he could increase his eagerness for chanting, hearing, knowledge, and detachment. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So there are many important points in these verses, and we'll try and cover some of them. One and foremost is the faults of intoxication. Well, what are the faults of intoxication? First and foremost, the mind becomes unbalanced. And due to unbalanced mind, destruction takes place in the form of harsh speech and eventually violence and killing. So, these things could not happen to the Yadu dynasty because they were under the direct control of the Lord. The only way these things happen is because the Lord ordained it or wished for it, and therefore it happened. Krishna, simply by thinking of something, can perform that work. And no one else has these type of qualities. And so this intoxication is extremely dangerous because one can lose their mind and do all kinds of illicit things in a state of intoxication. Sometimes people get intoxicated and they murder someone. And then their lawyer says, well, we'll try the strategy of temporarily insane. So the lawyer says, well, my client was temporarily insane when he killed someone. And so then Prabhupada gives the example of how this was going on once in India in a court case, and they called in a psychologist, and they asked the psychologist, they said, sir, you are analyzing many people. Can you tell us if this man who's accused of murder, is he crazy or not crazy? So the psychologist said, okay, well, yes, that's true. I do see many, many different clients, and oftentimes I'm asked this question, is this man crazy? Well, the truth is, Your Honor, everyone I've ever examined in my life is crazy. So he said, now it's up to you to decide whether this man is crazy or not, but I can tell you factually, everyone I've ever analyzed was crazy. In other words, he's saying everybody's crazy. So how is that a fact? Well, it's a fact because you have to be crazy if you want to live in this material world and engage in sense gratification and waste all your life eating, sleeping, mating, and defending like animals. Anyone that's come to this world is crazy because originally they became envious of God. And because of that, they were sent out of the spiritual world into the material world, where they can either do two things. One is continue to act crazy and eat, sleep, mate, and defend like an animal, and try and enjoy sense gratification, which could never be permanent. Or you can realize the fault of trying to dominate material nature and exploit it for our own sense gratification, because you understand that Ishavaisham idam sarvam jatkin jagatyam jagat tena taktena bunjitaha magridaha kasusidranam. Everything animate and inanimate that is in this world is owned and controlled by Lord Sri Krishna. And he has also set aside for every living entity their minimal needs. Knowing this, one should accept the minimum and not anymore, and use everything else in the service of Krishna. So Prabhupada said, if you can earn $1 million a day, then before sunset, you should spend it to spread Krishna consciousness. So, of course, you keep the little that you need for maintaining yourself and your family, but the bulk of it should go for Krishna consciousness. Okay, so this intoxication can make you forget all of that and act in a in a way of destroying your own self and others. And that's happened many, many times. Oftentimes, people who drink and drive, they have an accident, and many times they injure others or they kill others, or kill themselves. It happens every day around the world. People are getting intoxicated with alcohol or with drugs, and they kill somebody by accident, but they are prosecuted, maybe not at the top level of murder, but at least they are prosecuted for negligence or for manslaughter, etc. Okay, so this intoxication is extremely dangerous, and most people take some kind of intoxication. Now, the government knows that alcohol is very dangerous for health and for people, because they can lose control of themselves. But have they outlawed it? No. Why not? Because they're making money from it. In the same way that they have, in some states, permitted marijuana. Now, if you look up marijuana abuse and look it up on the internet, many mental problems are caused by marijuana. Look it up. See, marijuana, the way they got it to be permitted was, first they said, well, it's necessary because it's a good medicine for people who have stress. Okay, so then they got that accepted, and then later on they said, well, we should just make it legal for everybody. Well, they haven't made it legal for everybody, but some states in the United States have legalized the use of marijuana, even though it's outlawed by the federal government. So did you find an article? What does it say? Read it out loud.
Starts with mental health studies link marijuana use to depression, anxiety, suicide planning, and psychotic episodes.
Psychotic what?
Psychotic episodes.
Episodes, yeah. In other words, you go crazy.
Yeah.
Right. So now this is after legalizing it in different states like Washington State, Oregon, Colorado, other states. Not all the states have legalized it. And the federal government, it's still illegal. But they're not, as long as they have crazy politicians in charge or a crazy president, they don't prosecute it, although they can if they want to. because it's illegal. Even though the states have made it legal, some states have made it legal. So the government is just tolerating it for no good reason at all. But now they have studies after it being legalized, like for the last 8 or 9 years. Now there are many studies proving that it puts a person in a hallucinatory state of mind, and they you have accidents, and so many different things happen because of that. You want to read something else?
Yeah. They also have studies for the athletics. Research shows that marijuana affects timing, movement, and coordination, which can harm athletic performance.
Athletic performance, okay. So, they know how dangerous marijuana is. They know how dangerous alcohol is. But instead of outlawing both of those things, they're still permitting it. And then now they're trying to make it legal all over the country by passing a federal law, making it legal. So here we see this is not a serious government, because they're permitting things that are very detrimental for people. And the only reason they're permitting it is because they can make money off of it. It's another way of taxing the people. It's called sin tax. S-I-N, and then the second word, tax. So look that word up. Sin, first word, tax, second word. See, they know it's a sin to smoke marijuana and drink alcohol. What's it say?
Yeah. On Wikipedia, a sin tax is an excise tax specifically levied on certain goods deemed harmful to society and individuals, such as alcohol, tobacco, drugs, even candies, soft drinks, fast foods, coffee, sugar, gambling, and pornography.
And what?
Pornography.
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 Not pornography, it's pornography. Yeah. So we see these things are sins. They know they're sins, right? They call it sin tax, right? Not S-Y-N-T-A-X, but S-I-N, and then second word tax, T-A-X. So, but they tax it to make money for the government at the detriment of the people, right? And this is how crazy the government is when they know something is bad. Now I'm going to read something very interesting that Prabhupada has written. And this will give you an idea that if Krishna consciousness ever took over the government, certain things would happen. And it would be very good for society, very bad for the demons. So this is Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 17, verse number 38. And it's a verse spoken by Sutta Goswami. And he says, Maharaj Parikshit, thus being petitioned by the personality of Kali, gave him permission to reside in places where gambling, drinking, prostitution, and animal slaughter were performed. So, see, in the Bhagavad Gita, originally, it's Sukadeva Goswami speaking to Maharaj Parikshit. But then, also, when that conversation took place, Sutta Goswami was present, and he memorized the Bhagavatam as spoken by Sukadeva Goswami, and then he spoke the Bhagavatam a second time, when there was the sages, thousands of sages, with the advent of Kali Yuga, decided to have a big conference, and it lasted 1,000 years, where they listened to Bhagavatam, because that was they all decided that that was the solution to all the problems of Kali Yuga. Right? So then it's spoken again by Sutta Goswami, and then all those sages were led by a person called Sonaka Rishi. So you have different narratives going on in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay, so it says that Maharaj Pariksit, after the personality of Kali surrenders unto him. So you see, during the Vedic times, people followed rules. So if a demon surrendered to a devotee or to a king, they would not kill that person. Just like, according to the Geneva Convention, this is laws of engagement in war time. See, they even have that. And they had the same thing earlier in Vedic times. There were laws that you had to follow if you were going to get involved in a war. So the modern laws are the Geneva Convention. If a person surrenders, it can be an enemy combatant, then you're not allowed to kill that person. You have to make them a prisoner of war, and then you can take them to court, a military court, or a civilian court, and prosecute them. And but you're not allowed to kill them summarily. And then if you prosecute them and they're found completely guilty of murdering people, then you can kill them. But but there are some places where they don't allow capital punishment, which means killing people who've committed very bad crimes. So then they're condemned to stay in jail without any possibility of a parole for the rest of their life. So actually, killing them is a good thing if they're found guilty, because they will suffer for their sins that they committed in this life. If you don't kill them, you just keep them till they die naturally, then they suffer much more because they didn't get the karma in this lifetime. And the karma is much more severe after they die. So we see there are a lot of things that people don't understand, and governments don't understand. And actually, we can only understand what is the proper thing to do by reading the Bhagavatam. So here it says, the basic principles of irreligiosity, such as pride, prostitution, intoxication, and falsehood. In other words, the four pillars of sin, which are killing animals and illicit sex, gambling, and intoxication. Right? So in this way, he said the same thing, but he said pride, prostitution, intoxication, and falsehood. Why does he say pride and not meat eating? Because when people become proud, then falsely proud, that is, due to false ego, then they will kill animals and eat them. The basic principles of irreligiosity, such as pride, prostitution, intoxication, and falsehood, counteract the four principles of religion, namely austerity, cleanliness, mercy, and truthfulness. So in other words, austerity is destroyed by false pride that people develop due to bodily identification, and eventually they believe that they're superior to animals, so they can kill the animals and eat them, like the Catholic Church believes, and other Christian churches, and also other religions. And then when you say prostitution, it's talking about illicit sexual activity, and then intoxication, including coffee and tea, and then falsehood, or in other words, based on gambling and speculation. Okay, so then it says this pride, prostitution, intoxication, and falsehood counteract the four principles of religion, namely austerity, cleanliness, mercy, and truthfulness. The personality of Kali was given permission to live in four places, particularly mentioned by the king, namely the place of gambling, the place of prostitution, the place of drinking or intoxication, and the place of animal slaughter. Srila Jiva Goswami directs that drinking against the principles of scriptures, such as the Sotramani Yagya, Sotramani Yagya, it's taking alcohol. And number 2, association with women outside marriage. And number 3, killing animals against the injunctions of scriptures are irreligious. These are all sinful acts. In the Vedas, 2 different types of injunctions are there for the pavritas, or those who are engaged in material enjoyment, and for the nivritas, or those who are liberated from material bondage. The Vedic injunctions for the pavritas is to gradually regulate their activities toward the path of liberation. Therefore, for those who are in the lowest stage of ignorance and who indulge in wine, women, and flesh, drinking by performing Sotramani Yagya, association of women by marriage, and flesh eating by sacrifices are sometimes recommended. So, for these very sinful people, this gradual weaning off of these bad habits are recommended. But it's a gradual weaning. Look that word up, Weaning. Okay, so this drinking by performing Sotramani Yagya, association of women by marriage, and flesh eating by sacrifice are sometimes recommended. So, to wean people off, what does it mean, wean?
Wean is accustomed to food other than its mother milk. Second,
What?
First definition is accustomed to food other than its mother's milk.
Okay, and then next definition.
Second one is accustomed to managing without something on which they have become dependent, or of which they have become excessively fond.
Say it again.
Accustom someone to managing without something.
Okay, that is to get rid of a bad habit.
Yeah.
All right? And it's a gradual process.
Yep.
So the same way, to get rid of this bad habit of intoxication, illicit sex, and things like that, they're weaned off by 1, using this, engaging in the Sotramani Yagya. It's a certain type of sacrifice where you do take some intoxication, but it's very limited, and then eventually you stop. Right? And then number 2 is associating with women through marriage. So marriage is recommended. And then instead of engaging in illicit activities, legal marriage is recommended to control that tendency. And then number 3 is eating animals, and killing them, but very regulated. So the regulation is in Kali Yuga that low-class people are allowed to kill a black goat once in a month on the full moon, and it has to be done under the supervision of a brahmana, and the brahmana will make you say a mantra, a special mantra that basically means, now my dear animal, I'm killing you, and I recognize that in the next life you will kill me in the same way. You have to repeat that mantra. And then you're allowed to kill the animal, which is a black goat. If you go to Bengal, you'll see there's many black goats, right? Because Bengalis, they love to eat goat. So, in fact, yesterday, this man called. He had a very heavy accent. I get a call like this, like once every 2 or 3 months. And I could tell right away he was a Muslim, probably from Pakistan or one of these countries. He had a very heavy accent, and he had this rough voice, right? And he said, do you sell meat? Now, why is he calling me up? Because he saw that we have a farm with cows. Right? And I said, no. He said, what? I said, no. He said, you have cows? I said, yes. So, can I buy meat from you? I said, no. He said, why not? I said, because we don't kill the cows. He said, why don't you kill the cows? You should kill the cows. I will buy from you. I said, no, I'm not going to. We don't kill cows. I'm sorry. He said, that's wrong. You must do this. I said, no, I don't have to do it, and I'm not going to do it. And I hung up on him. So, at least once every 3 months, I get a phone call like this, usually from Muslims with very heavy accents, and they want to buy meat because they think that if they come to the farm, the cow will be slaughtered, or the goat will be slaughtered right in front of them, and that's the meat that they want, the freshest meat with blood, right? So here we see that to wean people off of this, there is the restricted meat eating based on some kind of a yagya. Okay, so then it says, therefore, for those who are in the lowest stage of ignorance and who indulge in wine, women, and flesh, drinking by performing sotramani yagya, association of women by marriage, and flesh eating by sacrifices are sometimes recommended. Such recommendations in the Vedic literature are meant for a particular class of men, meaning the lowest class, and not for all, but because they are injunctions of the Vedas for particular types of persons. Such activities by the Pavritas are not considered adharma. One man's food may be poison for others. Similarly, what is recommended for those in the mode of ignorance may be poison for those in the mode of goodness. Srila Jiva Goswami Prabhu therefore affirms that recommendations in the scriptures for a certain class of men are never to be considered adharma or irreligious, but such activities are factually adharma, and they are never to be encouraged. The recommendations in the scriptures are not meant for the encouragement of such adharma, but for regulating the necessary adharma gradually toward the path of dharma. Well, one time Prabhupada had a friend, his name was Dr. Patel, and they would take walks together on Juhu Beach in Mumbai early in the morning, and many of their discussions were recorded. And in one morning walk, Prabhupada is talking about this regulated animal slaughter, and the doctor said, well, I don't accept that part of the Vedas. Prabhupada said, you cannot do that. He said, what do you mean? I'm against meat eating. I'm a Vaishnava. Why are you telling me that I should eat meat? He said, we're not telling you should eat meat. This is only for the lowest class of people, to wean them off of meat eating. There's regulated yagyas that they have to perform to gradually, every time you're going to kill a goat once a month, you say, now, my dear brother, I realize that I'm killing you, and in the next life, you will kill me in the same way. Well, eventually it'll sink in if you keep saying it enough. That, hey, wait a minute, this is not good for me. I shouldn't do this. You see. So there is a saving grace by regulated yagyas to gradually wean people off of these bad habits. But the doctor, he kept saying, I don't accept this. If that's in the Vedas, I reject it. Prabhupada said, you cannot do that. He said, you are supporting meat eating? He said, no, I'm not supporting meat eating. I'm supporting helping people that are very low class to get off the desire and the activity of meat eating by these regulated restrictions. So back and forth, Prabhupada did not give in at all. And eventually he stopped trying to convince Prabhupada. So we see the same thing here. Jiva Goswami is saying, okay, it is a dharma, but for these very low class people, it's a first step toward dharma, giving them some way of eating meat, but in a very restricted way. Okay, so, and the same thing is in the Bible. The Bible, if you read the Old Testament, the Genesis, when after the flood, God gives the right to Noah and his sons and humanity. They're able to eat meat, but without one drop of blood in the flesh. Well, it's almost impossible to get every drop of blood out of the body of a dead animal. So, but the ancient Hebrews or the Jews, they were so adamant to do it that after they bled the animal as much as they could, then they would take the flesh and put it in brine. Brine means a salt water type of solution, and leave it like that for months, hoping that every drop would come out, right? And then they would eat the meat. So, I mean, that's a crazy thing. It's called kosher, and both the Muslims and the Jews try and follow it to make sure that there's no blood in the flesh of the animal. Okay, so, but it's not possible, but they try their best. So then why not even one drop? Because God says in the Bible, if there's just one drop, then he will kill the person that eats that flesh. So, but yet, there's no rules about eating apples and pears and plums, right? So, whenever there are many rules, just like there's rules about eating meat in America, they have advertisements. They say, well, heat it to 160 degrees before you eat it, right? Heat it before you eat it. So, because why? If you eat raw meat, you can easily get E. coli and other diseases, because oftentimes meat is infected with all these diseases. It's a dead body, right? It's a dead body in the state of deterioration. So, they have to keep it refrigerated and inspected, and then still people get sick eating meat. And usually they ask you, how do you want your steak? You want it raw or you want it charred? And people say, just make it raw so I can hear the goat, I can hear the cow screaming. I mean, anyway, all nonsense things, right? So this raw meat is extremely dangerous. So there are rules about cooking meat. I mean, if you try and get your certification as a food service person, most of the laws, most of the things that you have to learn are different types of meat and different types of temperature that they have to be heated to be sure that there are no contamination in it. And the times are different, and the heat is different for pork or for steak or this or that. So there are plenty of rules about eating meat, but there's no rule that I know of for eating an apple or a pear or a strawberry, right? So whenever you have a lot of rules about something, it means that it is highly dangerous, right? Just like most medicines, most allopathic medicines, you have to read the small print. And it says, if you have a heart problem and take this pill, you will die. What? Have you ever read those things? Right? I mean, what kind of medicine is this? They say you can die, if you mix this medicine with something else, or if you have a pre-existing condition, So why would you want to even take that medicine? You see. But they're just telling you the truth. That's how dangerous these medicines are, right? And that's how dangerous meat is also. Okay, so now Prabhupada says here, following in the footsteps of Maharaj Parikshit, it is the duty of all executive heads of states to see that the principles of religion, namely austerity, cleanliness, mercy, and truthfulness, are established in the state, and that the principles of irreligion, namely pride, illicit female association or prostitution, intoxication, and falsity, are checked by all means. And to make the best use of a bad bargain, the personality of Kali may be transferred to places of gambling, drinking, prostitution, and slaughterhouses, if there are any places like that. Those who are addicted to these irreligious habits may be regulated by the injunctions of the scripture. In no circumstances should they be encouraged by any state. In other words, the state should categorically stop all sorts of gambling, drinking, prostitution, and falsity. The state which wants to eradicate corruption by majority may introduce the principles of religion in the following manner. 1. 2 compulsory fasting days in a month, that's Ekadasi. If not more, austerity. Even from the economic point of view, such 2 fasting days in a month in the state will save tons of food, and the system will also act very favorably on the general health of the citizens. 2. There must be compulsory marriage of young boys and girls attaining boys 24 years of age and 16 years of age, respectively, for girls. That's, in other words, it's compulsory. You have to get married. You have to marry your son who's 24 years old to a girl who's 16 years old. This is compulsory. There's no harm in co-education in the schools and colleges, provided the boys and girls are duly married. And in case there is any intimate connection between a male and female student, they should be married properly without illicit relation. The Divorce Act is encouraging prostitution, and this should be abolished. Whoa. 3. The citizens of the state must give in charity up to 50% of their income for the purpose of creating a spiritual atmosphere in the state or in human society, both individually and collectively. They should preach the principles of Bhagavatam by A, karma yoga, or doing everything for the satisfaction of the Lord. B, regular hearing of the Srimad Bhagavatam from authorized persons or realized souls. C, chanting of the glories of the Lord congregationally at home or at places of pilgrimage. D, rendering all kinds of service to Bhagavatas engaged in preaching Srimad Bhagavatam. And E, residing in a place where the atmosphere is saturated with God consciousness. If the state is regulated by the above processes, naturally there will be God consciousness everywhere. Gambling of all description, even speculative business enterprise, is considered to be degrading. And when gambling is encouraged in the state, there is a complete disappearance of truthfulness. Allowing young boys and girls to remain unmarried more than the above-mentioned ages and licensing animal slaughterhouses of all description should be at once prohibited. The flesh eaters may be allowed to take flesh as mentioned in the scriptures and not otherwise. intoxication of all description, even smoking cigarettes, chewing tobacco, or drinking of tea must be prohibited. So, this is Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 17, verse number 38. So, are we following these things? Somewhat, but not strictly. And this is why Krishna consciousness will fail until we actually follow these things strictly. When we do follow them strictly, then everything turns into gold. The spiritual world becomes manifest in the material world. But because of mental and physical weakness, we don't want to follow these things. And because of that, there's only trouble. So we see that we're far away from following these things, especially in this society today. And there's no politicians that I know who would be enthusiastic about following these rules. Therefore, people are condemned in Kali Yuga to have repeated birth and death and not be ever free from all the anxieties that they're experiencing. Okay, so then the next verse goes even further. It says, the personality of Kali asked for something more, and because of his begging, the king gave him permission to live where there is gold, because wherever there is gold, there is also falsity, intoxication, lust, envy, and enmity, hatred. Purport. Although Maharaj Parikshit gave Kali permission to live in 4 places, it was very difficult for Kali to find the places, because during the reign of Maharaj Parikshit, there were no such places. What are those? They're places of intoxication, of prostitution, of gambling, and meat eating. there were no what do you call it? There were no stores where they sell meat or they cook meat and sell it. There were no gambling houses. There were no places of prostitution, and there were no places of no bars and intoxication. Anyway, so Kali got really frustrated and said, look, your kingdom, there's none of these places. Then give me something else. So then Maharaj Parikshit said, okay, well, then you can stay in a place where people are hoarding gold. In other words, where people are hiding their money. Just like in India, you have what's called black money. So where do they hide their black money? Sometimes they hide it underneath their bed. Is that right? I had an uncle, and he was a nice man. He was a nice man. And one day he called up my brother. He said, come immediately. I need your help. So one of my brothers went to see him. He said, what's the matter? He said, I want you to kill my doctor. He said, what? He said, I want you to kill my doctor. I said, why? He said, he stole all my money. I said, what? I said, what do you mean he stole all your money? He said, I was hiding my money under my bed, and I got sick, and he was my doctor. And then he said that you have cancer. So then he took me to a hospital, and they operated on me, and I was in bed, and I was very, very sick, and now I'm dying. And he was one of my best friends, and he used to come and play gamble with me, or they played this game called I forget the name in English now, but it's a board game, so they throw dice. And he said, and he became my friend, although he was my doctor. And I told him the secret of where I'm keeping my money. So when I was in the hospital, he came to my house and took all the money. So my brother said, well, how much money are you talking about? He said, $300,000. I said, are you crazy? I said, we're your nephews. Why didn't you call us? You don't trust us? You trust this doctor. By the way, he was a Jewish doctor. So, so he wants my brother to kill him, right? My brother said, I can't kill him. He said, no, I'm ordering you, kill that guy. He said, what do you mean you're ordering me to kill him? I'm not going to kill him. And then shortly after that, he died. So there are people, I'm sure that you have the same thing in India. They keep money underneath their bed or they keep it somewhere in their house, and it's all black money. And then oftentimes, they get raided by the Internal Revenue of India, and then they get caught, So wherever there is hoarding of gold, what happens? So it says, Maharaj Pariksit thus gave him permission, Kali, to live in a place where there is gold, because wherever there is gold, there are all the above mentioned four things, and over and above them there is enmity, hatred also, and jealousy. So the personality of Kali became gold standardized. You know what that means, gold standardized? Gold standardized, well, they're not doing it anymore. They used to do it in America, where they were keeping gold in Fort Knox, Kentucky, to back up the American dollar. Right? So President Nixon changed the rule. He said, we're not going to have the gold standard anymore because we're printing too much money. We can't have enough, as much gold as there is money. So now we're just going to have fiat money. Fiat money, what is that? It's money that you trust. When you lose the trust, the money loses its value. So as long as America has the strongest army in the world and the strongest economy, people trust the dollar. Just like now, there's economic downturn all over the place, but yet the dollar is higher now than it's ever been compared to other currencies. Because the other did you know that? If you have dollars now, you can buy more rupees than ever before, right? And you can, and it's the same with other currencies in relationship to the dollar. So why is that? Because the rest of the world is not doing as good as America, and America is not doing good at all, But still, because America seems to be doing better than other countries, the dollar is higher now than it's ever been. Look that up. Let's make sure. How much? How much? How much? Yeah, I remember like we go to India, I get 35, 36, 40 rupees, right? So it's doubled. Right? It's higher than it's ever been right now. You see how it's all based on cheating.
This is on max, Maharaj, so far.
Huh?
This is the maximum price so far.
Yeah, in history. Yeah. And America is not doing well, but the other countries are doing worse. So the dollar is at a premium. And it's just based on faith. It's not backed up by any gold anymore. That stopped in the 1960s. See? It's called fiat money, F-I-A-T. It's not the car fiat, but fiat money means it's just by, general acceptance. So it says, the artificial inflation of currency by the authorities encourages prostitution of the state economy. That's exactly what's happening now in America. The price of commodities becomes artificially inflated because of bad money or artificial currency notes. So that's exactly what Crazy Joe has been doing. I mean, not that Crazy Trump didn't do it also. They're just printing money now without any backing up of it. And because of that, it's causing inflation. It's causing prices to go up artificially. So there was this one guy, he was a farmer, he was selling hira. Hira means what? Huh? No, not hira. Kira. I mean, how do you say cucumber? Kira. Yeah, kira. Yeah, he was selling kira 40 years for 50 paisa. One day it comes and it's 3 rupees. And everyone comes, they say, buy some. I say, what is this? You were selling pachas paisas 40 years and now it's 3 rupees? He said, yes. I said, why? He said, dollar went up. You see, even the farmers figured out how to cheat the people, right? I mean, it still costs them 40, pachas paisa to make it or whatever. But this whole thing is cheating because the gold standard itself is cheating. The only thing that is not cheating is using gold coins. Then you can't cheat. But when you put the money on a gold standard and then print money based on how much gold you have in the bank or whatever, that's the beginning of the cheating. And now, after a little while, they say, well, we can't get that much gold, so we'll just do it on the basis of faith, see, which is what's happening now. So it says, the price of commodities become artificially inflated because of bad money or artificial currency notes. Bad money drives away good money. Instead of paper currency, actual gold coins should be used for exchange. There it is. And this will stop prostitution. This will stop prostitution of gold. Gold ornaments for women may be allowed by control, not by quality, but by quantity. This will discourage, in other words, you can have 24 karat gold, he's saying, but you can only have a certain amount of it as personal property. This will discourage lust, envy, and enmity. When there is actual gold currency in the form of coins, the influence of gold in producing falsity, prostitution, etc., will automatically cease. There will be no need of an anti-corruption ministry for another term of prostitution and falsity of purpose. So every government that comes in, they say, oh, well, we're going to stop this. The other guys were bad. I mean, we're good guys. But it ends up being the same thing, right? It doesn't get better. I mean, Trump was printing money, and Biden was printing money, and Obama was printing money. It's like drunken sailors. That's the way to describe these prostitutes. They're drunken sailors. They're just printing money all the time, right? And it just causes inflation and a lot of havoc. Okay, so this is in the Bhagavatam. This is the way society should be organized, and we see that we're very far away from that. Now, let's say Krishna consciousness took over the government, just like the Christians. They took over the government in Rome by convincing the emperor of Rome to become a Christian. Now, he wasn't really a Christian, but he did it because the number of Christians were increasing, and it did it as a strategy to keep his position. And because he was a low-class guy, the Christians also changed their rules from no meat eating to you can eat meat. And this happened over a couple hundred years, but as soon as they became very prominent and they started taking over governments, they changed the rules to be able to convince the kings or the emperors to become Christian. Okay, so if we read Bhagavatam and we understand what is actually good governance, then we have to become real serious about teaching this to our kids also. We can't keep it a secret and just let our kids become corrupted by material education. And once we adopt all these principles and actually practice them, you'll see, as I explained before, that nature will cooperate with us, that there will be regulated rains, there'll be regulated changes of season, that you won't have to dig the earth to get gold or jewels or anything like that. The earth will actually just throw it on the surface naturally. So all these miraculous things will happen if we follow the rules and regulations of Krishna consciousness. But we have to learn what those rules and regulations are. It's not just no meat eating, no gambling, like that. There are very specific rules in each one of those categories. Okay, we'll stop right there. Are there any questions?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. My question is related to the text 39. So in earlier days, the exchange was done through gold coins. As far
Yeah,
as
you can see if you ever go to museums, they have printed coins
Yeah.
from Rome, or even before that, the Sumerians, and even in India they have these coins. There was a picture of a king on it or something.
Yeah.
And it was sometimes it was gold, sometimes in India also they use miniature conch shells. There were different things that were considered currency.
So when we say that the Kali exists where the gold is, in
Hoarded
gold.
That means, see, it says here that you're allowed to have a certain quantity of gold, especially women with gold jewelry. But it's by quality, not by quantity. In other words, when it says that, what it means by quality, not by quantity, you can have 24 karat gold, but you're only allowed a certain amount of it. And that's to stop people from collecting too much, and then someone becomes very rich, and then other people become very poor, right?
Yeah.
It's to stop that, because otherwise that's what creates trouble in society, when you have very, very rich people who are greedy. Now, the kings were very rich, but they were also giving out tremendous amount of charity to the brahmanas, and then the brahmanas would distribute that charity. They wouldn't keep it themselves, to the ordinary people, because they were living with the ordinary people. The king was not living with ordinary people.
So can this gold be so hoarding of gold in the olden days, could that be compared with hoarding of money in
Yes.
the current days?
Yeah, exactly.
So if there is a lot of hoarding of money, does it mean that it's
Well, because of that,
existence of Kali?
the four regulated principles are violated. One thing leads to the other. Hoarding money, more money than you need. Look at Elon Musk. You know, his lifestyle is coming out now. He has over nine kids with three different women, right? And he hasn't stopped. He's going to probably have a lot more kids, right? He's a low-class guy, right? And he thinks he can get away with it because he's supposed to be the richest man in the world. You see, so it's a disease to have more money than you need, because eventually, unless you use it in Krishna consciousness, it corrupts you. And then you think that you can, take advantage of women, take advantage of people, do this, do that, whatever. It leads to sinful activity.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Okay, no questions, and we'll have Aarti, Guru Puja. Even the best Gates turned out to be a low-class person. You see, that money that goes to their head makes them crazy. They think they can take advantage of other people. For a long time, people thought, oh, Gates is the best of all those rich guys, because he is very charitable, but he turned out to be the same as Elon Musk, Jeffrey Epstein, all those people.
That's good, Prabhu. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma
Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma
Bandho Moi Savadana Mate
Bandho Moi Savadana Mate
Jahara Prasade Bai E Baba Toriya Jai
Janara Prasade Bai E Baba Toriya Jai
Krishna Prapti Hoy Jaha Hoy Te Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitite Koriya Kya
Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitete Koriya Kya
Arana Kori Ho Mane Asha
Arana Koriya Mane Asa
Shri Guru Charane Rati Aise Utama Gati
Guru Charane Rati Aise Utama Gati
Jai Prasade Pure Sarva Asha
Ye Prasade Pure Sarva
चक्षुदान दिलो जय जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से
चक्षुदान दिल जय जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से
चक्षुदान दिलो जय जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से
चक्षुदान दिल जय जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से
दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशित
दिव्य ज्ञानी देव प्रकाशित
प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाश जाते
प्रेम भक्ति चहते अविद्या विनाश जाते
प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाश जाते
प्रेम भक्ति चहते अविद्या विनाश जाते
वेद गाय जहाँ रचरित श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु आदम जनार बंधु श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु आदम जनार बंधु लोकेनाथ लोकेर जीवाना हा हा प्रभु करो दया देह मोरे पद छाया
प्रभु पुरा दया दया मोरे पद छाया
हा हा प्रभु करो दया देह
Jaya
Ebejas Gushuk Tribhuvana
Ebeyas Kushukti Bhuvana
Srila Prabhupada Patita Pavana
Prabhupada Patita Pavana
Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada
Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada
Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nidhi Namine
Vishnu Pradaya Krishna Rishaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nityanamine
Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine
Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine
Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Shri
Chaitanya Nityananda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Guru Deva Jaya Guru Deva Jaya Guru Deva Jaya Guru
Nitai Paramahansa Pararajikachasta Tarasa Tarashishi Shimad, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Amacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Brahma Shikaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Dvaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktivedanta Ki Jai, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gogopinath, Shama Kunda Radha, Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Shri Mayapura Dham Ki Jai, Shri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai, Tulasi Devi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Ganga Maya Ki Jai, Jamuna Maya Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhaktivinda Ki Jai, Nitai Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the Samal Devotees, all glories to Samal Devotees, all glories to Samal Devotees, all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
The lotus feet of our spiritual master are the only way by which we can attain pure devotional service. I bow down to his lotus feet with great awe and reverence. By his grace, one can cross the ocean of material suffering and obtain mercy of Krishna. My only wish is to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus mouth. Attachment to his lotus feet is the perfection that fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord, birth after birth. From him ecstatic prema emanates. By him ignorance is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing of his character. Our spiritual master is the ocean of mercy, the friend of the poor, and Lord and Master devotees. O Master, be merciful unto me. Give me the shade of your lotus feet. Your frame is spared all of the three worlds. We take shelter of your lotus feet. Srila Prabhupada Ki.